There's a tradition in academic circles when someone retires to do something called a last lecture. One of the more famous is Randy Pausch's lecture that he did at Carnegie Mellon, probably has hundreds and millions of hits. I am no Randy Pausch, and I'm not going to do that, and I don't believe in lecturing, and I'm not sure I like the word last. So I decided what I need to do is, for just right now, talk about the latest word. And the reason I do that came from one of my teachers, James Luther Adams, who taught at Harvard, and I used to go over to his house after classes. And he said to me, somebody wanted to tape him doing his last lecture, and he said, there is no last lecture, there's only the latest. So this is the latest words, and they come after an experience I had. Let me tell you what it was, and then I'll tell you what it means to me. Within the last month, I had various kinds of tests, and the diagnosis was that I might have cancer. I have a 50-50 chance by the end of this month. So this might be the last lecture, but I hope it's the latest. That frames your mind incredible. Everyone knows or thinks about dying, but nobody really faces it until it happens. So this gave me thought about what's really important in living. And what also dawned on me are the dying words of the poet Gertrude Stein. At her deathbed, famous last words, she was asked this question: Gertrude, Gertrude, what is the answer? What is the answer? And before she died, she said, well, what is the question? So my question is how best to live facing death. And the more I've thought about it, that's the critical question in philosophy. In everybody's life, we don't want to think about it, but it's a question of having limited time. And then it becomes a question, well, how do you use the time? And it's amazing when you get that kind of a diagnosis, not knowing now the outcome, how things become very clear and very simple. To me, the things that are most important are close at hand. And they have something to do with those you love and those around you and what you love doing. And there are two people that have been kind of my wisdom teachers here when it comes to facing death and dying. One is obviously Socrates, one of the earliest philosophers who never wrote a word, but Plato recorded his words. And when he faced death, he was told he had to drink poison hemlock because he was threatening the culture at that time. Someone asked him if he was afraid, and he said, no, not really. He said, here's a good rational way of looking at it. He said, either one of two things will happen. He said, either there is something beyond this life, in which case I'm not afraid. I'll have a chance to continue my discussions with friends and family. Or he said, there's nothing. And then death is more like a long night's sleep. And he said, that doesn't frighten me either. So that strikes me as a rational way of looking at this issue and a comforting way. The second way of looking at it came from a book I often use in philosophy classes, and that's Tuesdays with Morrie. And I sometimes get people who are academics criticizing me for using the book. It's too simple. You need a much thicker book that costs more. Morrie was a teacher, as he said, a teacher to the last. So he gave not a last word, but his example of dying was a testimony to his teaching. He lived as a teacher till the end and used his death as a way to help others. And he said there were two words of wisdom that he offered in his book, Tuesdays with Morrie. One was, he said, the lesson of living and facing death is learning when to hold on and also when to let go. And I've thought that that is a lesson that's applicable at any time, whether you face your own death or not. It's learning when to hold on to things that are important and also when to let go of things that really are not that important. And the trick is learning which is which. As you face death, you begin to realize the most important things have always been close to you. They're not abstract. They have to do with relationships and people, much more than with ideas or academia. So that's one lesson I learned from Morrie. The other was he said something that puzzled me, and I've been thinking about what he meant by it. And when you begin to look at if your time is limited, and all our times are limited, then it does make a lot of sense. He said that love is the only rational act. And the more I've thought about it, well, love is kind of emotional. Why is it rational? And the truth is that if you love and give forth love, you get it back. If you don't love people, even those that are difficult, then you're going to create more violence in the world. So love is the only rational act. So my words are very simple. Know when to hold on and when to let go, and don't be afraid. Everyone is going to die. So use your time wisely.